Debbie, lovely to meet you, like over this electronic means. It's really cool.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I, I'm telling you something. Social media, for all everybody bags on it, it's really got some interesting opportunities, and that I
Exactly.
found because just like with Instagram, right? It's allowed me to reach out to so many people that I wouldn't have access to otherwise.
Yes.
And for that, I'm so grateful. It's just been very interesting.
Yeah, and I mean it's changed the world essentially as to how we interact with one another and how we get to know people and how we understand cultures even to a large degree. You're right.
Well, okay, if you think about it, I've been around in surf. I mean, my
Yeah.
sister was a world champion in the 60s, and no
Yeah.
one ever thought about what I knew or what I did or anything. Do you understand? It was Herbie and Christian and Nathan and Joyce. And I thought, well, what? Was I dead? And I thought, no. And so it was very interesting. And now, because I was laughing with Herbie, I said they need stories from other people besides all you guys that they've already interviewed a million times.
There we go. Exactly that. And the more stories we can tap into that unlock, you see life from a different perspective. I mean, even though you're married to Herbie, you see it from a totally different angle, right?
Well, and you know what? I mean, I was there with Wave Warriors. I've run Astrodeck, right? My dad was the largest supplier of printed textiles to the surf industry for 35 years. My kids, not only, I mean, they were sponsored. So I've had all these different experiences that make my life in surf probably more holistic, if you will, because it's tapped into so many different areas than
Mm-hmm.
most people.
100%, without a
I
doubt,
mean, I've had
without a
my own
doubt.
surf. I've had a surf team. I've had a surf team, right? I've run a surf company. Probably one of the only women that have run a surf company. But see, and it was very interesting because everybody thought Herbie did everything, and so he was great with it because he got to go out and take the public bow. And I thought, well, that's kind of far out, dude. Right. But so anyway, so it's been very interesting. In fact, when you said something as a prequel to what we were going to talk about from the interview that I did with Jamie Brissick. I wanted to add something to it to
Please do.
because as far as all the companies having to sell to back to school, the party was on and that party was expensive with all the surfers getting sponsored and all the trips and the photographers and the ads. How they couldn't sell t-shirts to just a surf shop and expect to finance everything.
Exactly.
And so it was kind of a catch 22 for them to finance the party for all the insiders. They had to sell it to all the outsiders. And so that's how a lot of them they got upside down. You know what I mean? And so then they got bought by other people because the debt got unsurmountable. Do you understand? And so
Yep.
I thought about it and I thought I only touched on one side how these school vice principals started to dictate what could be on the shirt. But I understand how the surf industry got there because how about all those big salaries that all the surfers were getting and everything? How do you finance that on an $8 wholesale T-shirt?
Exactly.
I mean, how
No?
many T-shirts? Okay, you guys wore, as you said, civvies. Okay, so how?
Yeah.
I mean, you wore a uniform to school. So how many T-shirts did you really buy? Certainly not enough to have afforded these companies to send these guys all around the world surfing and sponsoring all the contests and everything. So when you think about it, it wasn't one event. It was the whole picture that I don't think most people are very aware of.
And I mean, it's great that you're unpacking this because from our perspective, and I speak purely from a South African perspective, and I was there when Brad Gerlach and Matt Archibald and characters and personalities like that were, the gritty, edgy, in your face kind of guys who were like really, I was there when Brad Gerlach lifted the trophy at the Gunston 500, and I chatted to Brad about this. And but in South Africa, and I'm speaking, specifically to South Africa, I went to a school where we had to wear uniforms, and we got physically hit with sticks if our hair touched our ears. And we were in such a strict authoritarian type mold that we were brought up. And us creatives, because I deem myself as a creative, we were the dropouts of society. We were told that, well, you're not an academic, you're not playing mainstream sports like you know,
But you
cricket
know
or
what?
tennis.
See, that's what surf was originally. That's when I went to school. I didn't want to go out with the football players and all that. The surfers were the ones that were kind of rock and roll, kind of a bit dangerous. But as the industry started to grow, they got rid of the characters because they needed it to check for back to school sales. But yeah, but then I mean, see, just like when we did Wave Warriors, one of the reasons we did Wave Warriors, we were in the building with Surfing Magazine, and so Christian was doing all of this rad stuff, and they wouldn't print any of it because they were owned by their advertisers, like all magazines, right? That's the follow the money. See, if you follow the money, you get the answer, but you have to keep following it. You can't let it stop on one aspect of it because it's pervasive, right? So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so Herbie started making videos because he goes, I'm going to make training tapes that won't be filtered through an industry. Do you understand? We're going to do it our way, and I'm going to show what I think is progressive. And so Herbie would go to Hawaii. We owned the house with Jerry Lopez at Pipeline, and he had filmed for the winter, right? And he was filming all these guys. I mean, they were the raddest tube riders. They were not getting any kind of play in the magazines. Do you understand?
Mm-hmm.
Because they weren't sponsored by the big companies that were trying to sell this image of that kind of, collegiate surf world, right? They told Christian, you can't be in surfing magazine, you know? So you go, oh, okay. So we kind of circumvented it by making videos and stuff. We wanted to kind of portray surfing in the way that we looked at it, right? Just like doing the Cabo contest that we did, right? We got 2 party planes and it was rock and roll, And so Herbie and I thought of surfing like that. And because we weren't getting paid by anybody, right? We could do it our way. And so I think that perhaps financially it cost us. Do you understand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we weren't part of the quote unquote industry, and so, but in the long run, I'm glad I did it my way. I own all that footage and everything, and I think that we really helped change what surfing looked like, because if you look at it, it only took them 25, 30 years to catch on. And
Yeah, super progressive, ahead of your time, because you were willing to take the risks back then.
yeah, but see, then you didn't make the money, so that was the choice.
That's the
And
problem
I said,
about
yeah,
being a pioneer.
but I can still give everybody the finger. And I said, oh, I like that. and so
So
and so you look at it and you go, okay, so it was just we had a different voice. Herbie and I were kind of the artists, and to survive in Astrodeck, we ended up doing everything. So that way we could keep the cost down. So we made the movies, we had the kids, you understand? We did all the graphics, we did all the catalogs, we did all the trade shows, we built the booths. So Herb and I did everything personally. And so I think, oh, just like I still climb up a 15-foot ladder and get down 35-pound boxes to go ship Astrodeck. And so there isn't some guy working in the back of the warehouse. That guy is me. And so I think that allowed, in some ways, us to keep our voice the way we wanted it, because we weren't subject to anybody else.
gave you poetic license.
Yes, and so that was the artist in us. Do you understand? I did not want to give up having the opportunity to do an ad that we wanted to do, or to have somebody tell us, oh, you can't do it that way. Maybe we didn't do it the right way, but when we made the mistakes, we learned from them because it cost us personally. And so I just think, so as a life experience, it was much better. As a business, I'll tell you something. If I had learned how to borrow other people's money and use that, I might have done better at business, but I didn't know how to do that. And so we just went, like people said, well, why don't you grow it more? To grow it more, you have to give away pieces. And in giving away a piece, that piece is part of you. Just like people come and say now, oh, I really like to buy Astrodeck. They don't want to buy Astrodeck. They want to buy my history.
Yep. They want to buy you.
And so then they want to retell it.
Yep, I know.
And they can't retell it, because just like, okay, let's say you from South Africa, you have your perspective based on the environment that you were raised in.
Yep.
Right. And just like I have mine. And so for someone to come and retell my story. So now when people call and say, oh, gee, I want to write something about wave warriors, I said, no, if you want something written, I'll write it. Well,
Exactly.
I feel that way. You're getting the story because I was there. Most of these young kids couldn't have handled it because they're way too inexperienced to have handled the world as rough as it was at that time. Just like you said, you'd get beat with a stick. Well, these kids in California
Yeah.
never.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just rewind a little bit, Debbie, because I find it interesting when we talk about this. By the way, I've just, I'm close on 50 now, and I've only just got to the point in my life being in business with loads of people and being as a creative being treated by the corpos as just another number and everything. But I've got to my point in life where now I work for myself and I say my own things and I do my own things. So everything that you speak resonates with me, and I understand I've given away pieces of my soul in the past, and I've done all of that. But recently we screened the rebirth of the endless summer, and there's this really strong connect with Dickie Metz when he came to on his world tour, and he ended up in Cape Town, and he bumped into John Whitmore, and he says to John Whitmore, he's like, what pile of crap are you surfing, basically? Who shaped that? And John's like, well, I did. And this relationship that Dickie Metz had with John Whitmore and Hobie Alter and Grubby Clark, and I find it
But they
interesting,
were
the
all,
South African connect to California,
right. They would all come where I lived on Beach Road with my family, right? When I was
Yeah.
a young girl, the guy next door was a bachelor and he really had what was kind of like a beach club. And so Grubby lived there while he was recuperating from back surgery. That's where he invented the process for blowing foam. Hobie would come down there, Bruce Brown, Dick Metz, all of them. So those were my dad's friends. And so I grew up with them. And so, like when I met Herbie, it wasn't a stretch. He reminded me of all my dad's friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were all surfers. My dad had been stationed in Hawaii in the 50s, right? And he would spend the days at Makaha shaping surfboards and surfing big waves and send photos home. So all his friends started to migrate to Hawaii to go surfing. And so I grew up with all of these guys. And so it seems to me, but I kind of made a jump into the contemporary surf world with Wave Warriors and Christian and Nathan. So it's carried from my dad's era of that longboard and trimming, where they didn't turn. Phil Edwards was the one that did the first turn, right? My sister was the first woman to surf pipeline. And so when you think about, and so I kind of think about what's kind of interesting. I think it kind of took 60 years for them to take this dream and really screw it up. Who knew? That was the timeline, right? It takes 60 years to really fuck something up, right? And
Yeah.
I think what it was they tried to take this dream. Surfing was a lifestyle. And when they turned it into a sport to try to package it,
Mm-hmm.
it changed the dynamics of it, right? Because they could no longer sell the dream. And the dream is what sold. It was something that people, just like now when people, let's say if you're going to sell in the Midwest, okay, that they have they're land bound and all this. Their idea of surfing is still that idea of that kind of longboard hood ornament. It's not shortboard aerial surfing, right?
Yeah.
And so
It's Gidget.
absolutely, and that's what they want. It was that kind of 50s, mid-century modern, right? It was that idea of the sun bleached hair and and moondoggy and all that. And so it's very interesting. So as surfing itself or the surf industry tried
Mm-hmm.
to kind of package this kind of competition surfing, it narrowed it because not that many people can even relate to it, and not that many, and because the fact is that's why they did the wave pool. They thought they could turn on a wave at a certain time and then they could get the advertisers. Well, the unintended consequence was it was so freaking boring, no one wanted to watch it. And so you just kind of look at it and you say, oh, isn't that interesting? But surfing, what I thought about it was really about just performance, a personal performance thing. And it was the lifestyle that Herbie and I were fortunate enough to live, because I don't see that really much anymore.
And you got to hang, I mean, when you're in Hawaii, you got to hang with some really cool people. I mean, you rub shoulders, I mean, you have done throughout your life. And I think it's because of the dynamism of you as a person. And, you know, for me, the one of the reasons I wanted to connect with you is because, you know, my goal as a South African who grew up in a very reserved society, but yearned and looked to individuals, you know, like, as I say, the Matt Archibalds of the world, and then your sons who were really um, pushing the boundaries in terms of like self-expression. And your family has always been about that. You've encouraged self-expression. You've allowed your sons to just go for it essentially and given them free reign to do so. But you've done so in a way that, you know, is really inspiring, because I think a lot of people out there are feeling this tension beneath the veneer that we call surfing, which it is today. You know, there's this veneer which is surfing, and then beneath it is a bunch of pent up people going like, what's actually gone on with surfing? Like, where are we at? Because we've lost that soul, we've lost that grit, that edginess, that freedom, you know. And I think that's the most interesting for me. At growing up as a young kid as well, my mother pretty much brought me up on her own, and I grew up in what is known to you guys as the project. And she instilled in me a deep respect for women and what women, you know, what women can give to society, and the helicopter view, and you know, that matriarchal, and that's why I wanted to connect with you, because I think you've got such a rich, wonderful history of giving to the surf industry that a lot of people, especially here in South Africa, the younger generation, don't fully appreciate.
Well, you know, it's kind of, I started writing a lot, you know, and I got to interview a lot of people, and everybody say, "Gosh, you do the greatest interview." It's because I never asked these guys about surfing. Everybody already knew. Do you understand? And so,
Yeah,
how many times, just like when people want to interview Christian, he goes, "Don't ask me about 1989." He goes, "How many times do I need to talk about it? Have
yeah,
I grown since then? And what have I done since then?" And so, I think that that's kind of interesting, because I think when I try to interview people, first of all, like I did an interview with my older sister Joyce a couple of years ago, and I spent 3 days researching all the stuff I could find online that other people had written about her. You know what I mean? Because I wanted to see what other people had said. Because I used to go in the car with her to the surf contest. So I was really there. So I had experienced it from such a different point of view. And I think those stories haven't been told, because I think what happens is young people come on board and then they want to go interview somebody, but they interview them and they ask questions more from their perspective, and that's
mm-hmm.
fine too. But I think some of this stuff has been lost. Like, okay, so many people now, they go to the beach and they take photos of their kids surfing because they want to get them sponsored. Okay, Herbie and I never thought about that. We just went to the beach, took them with us, dragged them along everywhere we went. Do you understand? And
Mm-hmm.
Herbie was a surfer. And so they just went surfing. They went surfing with my dad. They went surfing with everybody. So it wasn't the same mindset as saying, well, I'm going to go take videos of them so they can get sponsored. Do you understand what I'm saying? So many
Yeah,
parents now, they homeschool their kids and they want them sponsored. Well, I I didn't want my kids to identify with a freaking company. Do you understand what I mean? So kids nowadays, oh, I want this sticker. I want to be identified with a company. When I was a young kid, there wasn't companies like that. You didn't wear logos.
mm,
And I think, and so that's very interesting. Do you understand? There was no logos. And so you tried to become something of who you were instead of how I can represent some freaking company. And
yeah,
so I think that in these last 40 some years in surfing, and I understand it, they needed the money so they could go surfing. You know what I mean, right? These guys, so they didn't have to go get a job, so they could go surfing and travel the world and everything. But at the same time, there's something that happened that then kids wanted corporate stickers on their skateboards so they could be related to the company that they thought was cool. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting that everybody now wants to be related to a company,
yeah. I
you know?
suppose that they created this tribe mentality, though, that it's cool to be associated as a tribe, and I think that's where the corpos kind of got it right. You know, they like brainwashed everyone into thinking.
Now, but in surf, all the companies are owned by one giant behemoth. One giant shark owns them all.
Yeah.
And so and I don't think the young kids understand this, right? And they like the image of this of the team riders that the company has and stuff. But I just think it's very interesting that we went from being individuals into being kind of belonging to companies,
Mm,
and I thought, oh, there's some stuff about that's not good.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what would you what would your advice be, okay, to young up and coming, like, I mean, let's face it, you kind of, you did it without realizing it. Essentially, you lived your life and you created Astrodeck along with Hobie, and but what you've done is you've kind of, you've without realizing it, you've created something really cool that people sort of appreciate and feel inspired by. Like, what would your, I mean, how do you give advice to younger people, the younger generation who are so entrenched in this, what you say, like, wanting to have and be associated with these blue chip sponsors and that, like, what's your advice to
But
to these
I
people?
understand. I understand where they're at because for them to be able to surf, do you understand? Instead of going and getting a job someplace, do you understand? Right. So I understand the need for the sponsorship. I get that totally. And
Yeah.
nowadays, like in California, it would be much harder to start your own business and everything else because they've made so many obstacles to that. It's so expensive with rents and salaries and insurance and overhead. Do you understand, right? That
Mm-hmm.
they've almost made a barrier to starting your own company. Do you understand, right? And so I think that those things make it a lot more difficult. That even the small companies, that's why they get bought up because they get into debt trying to manufacture the clothes, trying to sell them. Do you understand? Right? You have to take
Mm-hmm.
on employees and all this stuff. And so it's a much different world than it was when Herbie and I were young. I think that there was more opportunity to be an entrepreneur. And so I'd really have to think about how I guess that these young guys, they're going to have to go for the sponsorship to allow them to go surfing and to have someone help them with travel expenses and these other things.
Mm-hmm.
Because today, because I was talking with Herbie the other day and said, we couldn't do Astrodeck now. We started by manufacturing here in California. Well, you can't manufacture in California now because the bar is so high. Do you understand the expense and all the overhead and everything? So you had to manufacture offshore. So I look at it now and think, boy, it would really be a different world to try to become that entrepreneur. There aren't the same opportunities in California that there were. And that's too bad, And so I think that these young kids, they're going to have to get involved with these companies to show them the ropes, to help
Mm-hmm.
them to maybe do capsules on their own where they get a reputation as being an artist and being of value in a different way than just surfing. And that's what I would say. I'd say I'd sure want to develop my other skills that makes me attractive. Do you understand? With art and other things like that, that then when that corporate sponsorship starts coming to an end, you have created value for yourself and for others that you can have a longer lasting career.
Mm. That's an interesting point. I think that by what you've said there in terms of like not putting all your eggs into one basket and thinking that this is the be all and end all of who you are really as a person, but being able to create other options for yourself, for your, it's almost like going back to what you were saying earlier. In your younger days where there were no logos and no sponsors, you had to be your own brand essentially, and you had to invent yourself and find that path yourself. It wasn't laid out for you. And I suppose that's the nugget of gold. I think your best bit of advice for the younger generation is don't rely on the norms of the last 2 decades in the surf industry. Build some sort of a, some sort of an, well, not so much a nest, but like build on your other qualities, your other strengths over and above surfing that you can rely on, to propel you and to push you forward. you know,
Yeah,
if
but
it's in,
there's a catch 22 in that.
yeah,
With, let's say, my grandson Grayson, who's a great
yeah,
skateboarder. Okay.
great
Okay,
skateboarder.
he slammed so hard and he's so hurt and stuff. Does he feel like doing something else when he's off that skateboard recuperating?
No,
So I've helped him develop the art side of himself. Do you understand? Herbie and I have mentored him in that. So maybe the best advice that I could give, because when you're young, no offense, you're dumb, and that's how you can handle being young, right?
yeah,
We all are. Do you understand? And there's nothing wrong with that. That helps you be like, see, Herbie and I, maybe we were so dumb we didn't know we couldn't do stuff. So we did it anyway. But so maybe the best advice that I could give to someone young is to try and to find mentors that will help you to learn something that maybe you didn't know that you were so interested in, but that will help to guide you and give you some of the tools that you can use that you don't know that you may not use at the time, but that you'll have that in your medicine bag to pull out as time goes on.
that's why we're here, and that's why I'm talking to you, and that's why I talk to people like yourself, Debbie. It's because I know it's very cliche and really cheesy, but it's like that old illustration about a tree, and every strong tree with beautiful leaves and branches have big strong roots, and sometimes the leaves, and I'm using this as the metaphor between the younger generation and the older generation, the roots, you form part of the roots that paved the way for so many things within the surf industry, however which way you look at it. And that's why these conversations and this energy that we're putting out to the younger generation are so important. And you've hit the nail on the head. Look for mentors, listen to conversations like this with our elders, because I think that's also been lost in translation, where we'd sit around a campfire and we'd sit and talk to the older generation, and we'd glean from their history. And now that we're on the digital age, some of that has been lost. And it's not a I'm also very much a futurist, and I love looking forward and not looking backward, but it's kind of finding that balance, because what you're telling me and the experience that you have in your younger years, I mean, you've hung with some of the coolest people in the world, like Jimi Hendrix, and so many personalities like this, and that energy is still in you, and I find it so important to keep that alive and to keep the younger generation flowing with that.
See, just like, okay, like on social media, I answer everyone.
Amazing.
They're writing because they want me to hear them.
Yep.
So I'm not trying to be obtuse to that. And so if they ask me a question, I answer. And I think that that's important, because I think that kids feel very isolated, and that there aren't the mentors that they can kind of look up to. Do you understand, right? Or that will take the time to talk to them. And so, well, this is kind of funny. Okay. Let's talk about social media for a minute. Okay. Like Grayson's going, oh, I can't believe that you're on social media, right? Well, so then he found out that all his friends follow me. And now he goes, God, everywhere I go, people say, did you see what your grandmother posted? So the point I'm making is that has made me accessible to the kids Grayson's age, because now they see me and I post all this stuff of people eating it and doing all these crazy things. But they go, oh my God, I can talk to her because she's like me. So what I've done is allowed the accessibility to have them be able to look at me and not just think, oh, there's some dumb old broad. What does she know? Do you understand? So I've made a point of making sure that they can all hear the voice, so we can all have fun together. And so there isn't that giant barrier, because otherwise they can't hear you. And so what good is it if you've had a lot of life experience, if the younger people that might get advantage from that can't hear you? So if you don't speak their language, how can you ever talk to them?
How can you connect with them? And how can you, and I think the greatest thing about your feed as well is it's teaching people, and it's my ethos and my mantra is to, like, don't take life too seriously. laugh at yourself and have a giggle.
Always,
And
always. I mean, like the guy in the stretch leather pants with a mullet. I mean, come on, juggling and playing the guitar. What is not to love about that, right? And so I,
exactly.
I, I just think that that way it kind of, once you can laugh, you can hear. Because what happens is all the cells in your body soften up.
There we go.
And
The dopamine,
and
the
so
endorphins.
yes, and so that way you soften up and then you can hear. If you can't laugh, what happens is your body's so rigid that you're unable to take in new information
Yep.
because you're already stuck. You're stuck. You're rigid. So if you can laugh and be silly, do you understand? Then you go, "Oh my God, that was so funny," right? And so I think that's the way to share life's very solemn lessons is if you can
Yes.
soften it up so we can hear each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Completely agree.
Otherwise,
They
go ahead.
they say the British laughed themselves through the Second World War, and because they've infamous for, making comedy, making light heart of very serious situations. And it's not about in any way disrespecting or downplaying the the seriousness of it, but what it is doing is it's providing one with an inner sense of calm, happiness in moments in society now where we are faced with such like seemingly insurmountable times from a from a pressure point of view. If we were just to remember to just laugh and sometimes make a joke out of the situation, because like the body needs it, right? The body needs to laugh and
That,
just
that's the secret of good health. You know what I mean, right? Because you can exercise and you can do all this stuff, right? But if you can't soften up and bring in that, do you understand? In fact, somebody wrote me recently and they want me to do an article on rhythm. And I was thinking about it and I thought, well, rhythm when I was young, I was listening to freaking music, man. It was so rad. And maybe now it's just listening to the dog breathe rhythmatically. Do you understand? Maybe
mm-hmm,
that's how we march through the age. Do you understand? Because
mm-hmm,
I see this long spectrum from this life that I've had, how the word just rhythm itself had a different connotation through the different decades. And now it's just hearing maybe it's just the life breath itself, right? Of being
mm-hmm.
soft and listening to it come in and come out, that there isn't the same effort, that you can just be peaceful and just let go.
Exactly. And by not being too serious, and stress is the biggest killer, and stress comes in many different forms, and sometimes being too serious and just taking life and everything too seriously. I mean, you'll have a dude that's like got this beautiful nutritional diet, but he's got a really sort of stressful job. He works in the city, he sits on a train every day, he comes home, and he might be fit outwardly, but he keels over at a very young age because of the stress factor. And then you've got the Rolling Stones who like have,
Oh, they're going. That's it, baby. That's
you
it,
know what I'm
right?
saying?
Right.
They've just been
Well,
having fun. They've been having fun, but they've been doing like crazy stuff for like however many decades, putting all sorts of things that doctors say you shouldn't be putting in your body. But the fact of the matter is that they're not stressed.
no, nope. It's that music, right? That they're allowed to go out and be joyful,
Yeah.
and you just, oh, that's great, right? And that's it. When I was young, I was so hard on myself. I'd run 20 miles a day. I'd eat 7 raisins. Do you understand? And so as I've gotten older, I've understood that those were just part of life's lessons. Do you understand that to allow myself to relax a bit and kind of flow with it is so much easier. But I'm telling you something, it's all words until you can get there yourself. And that's the
True.
journey.
That's the journey.
Right. When you're 40, you're 40, right? And you're going to do what you do at 40, right? But if I maybe had the chance to have more female mentors, because there really wasn't that available,
Mm-hmm.
because there wasn't women that were living the same kind of lifestyle that I was involved in, right? And
Yes.
so there wasn't kind of that mentorship there. I think that there was a lot more mentorship for the male. Do you understand, right? And so I think that I felt kind of like I was blazing my own trail through this. And I think that art really helped me. and it gave me a great sense of perspective, you know, to stand in front of a blank canvas. And I've been a stone sculptor, and, you know, I've written plays, and I've done all sorts of interviews and stuff. And I think the whole thing is to just keep creating whatever that
Amazing.
is. I mean, I knit. It doesn't matter as long as you're creating something. I think that's kind of the secret of staying connected.
And youthful. I've got two young sons as well.
How old?
They're
How old?
5 and 7.5.
Oh, see,
Both
I have two grandsons around that age.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Nathan's children.
wonderful. My wife's in the room keeping them quiet at the moment, but yeah, both surfing and skating and just like, you know, just enjoying life. And yeah, it's wonderful having boys. They keep me very young.
You know what? And so I see Nathan's boys, and so sometimes they remind me so much of Christian and Nathan. You know what I mean? You go, oh, it's starting all over again. Right. And you go, oh, isn't that interesting? Right. And one likes to surf and one likes to skate. And it's just, they kind of look like Christian and Nathan. And you just go, oh my gosh, how fun. And Nathan goes, yeah, I just want to give them the same life I had, you know? And I
Exactly.
said, oh, that's really nice.
Yeah, they got the little. Is it Jetson? Hey, one of the grandkids.
Zappa and Jetson Epic. I
Yeah,
said, man,
I've seen
they
their little
better be
YouTube
badass.
shows.
Is all I.
I've seen their YouTube shows. You know.
Yeah. It's cute.
Yeah,
They're
great.
cute. And Nathan's really good with them. He was older. See, I was still a teenager when I had Christian. And so I thought about it. It's different. If you're a teenager raising kids, it's different than if you're in your late 30s raising kids.
That's true. That's true.
You
Yeah,
know,
I was 41 when I had my first.
right. Well, see, I was already a grandmother at that age.
Yeah.
So it was different, you understand? And it was a different time. But I think that Nathan is doing a good job trying to help them see that life of surf and skate not as such a competition thing, but as
Yep.
this joy of pushing yourself. And see, that's the thing I like about surfing and skating. It wasn't about doing it against someone else or comparing yourself to them. It was about comparing yourself to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
I like
it.
that. I see, my sister was a competitive surfer. Okay. She was competitive about everything, about ping pong, about anything she did. She was competitive. I wasn't. I very much was about competing with myself and pushing myself to be the best I could be. And
Mhm.
so to me, surfing and skating, that's what that represented. It wasn't about a contest and being better than someone, just like with Christian doing aerials. Herbie was looking at it, you know, and he goes, the next thing that's going to happen surfing is they're going to take it in the air. And so he used to take Christian and Nathan to the skate park all the time. And the skate park, you have a certain run that you can do and the
Mhm.
circumstances where you can set it up that you can practice over and over and over again. So Herbie used to take the boys to the skate park, and he promoted them doing these aerials and stuff. He goes, that's the next frontier in surfing, right? And so Christian would skate with all the best skaters, right? And said, oh, that's so, you know, and so that's kind of how that progressed, right? But I never pushed them to be in contests or anything. Nathan doesn't really surf much contests, and neither did Christian. First of all, they didn't like Christian, and that was a whole nother
Another
situation.
story. Yeah.
Yeah, a whole nother situation, but whatever. Anyway, but it was about pushing yourself to be your best, and the challenge was there for you, for me, whether it was in art or whether it was in surfing or skating or dancing. I did not want to be competitive. I wanted to be the best that I could be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that setting up goals and constantly kind of pushing that goalpost farther and farther, and I really liked that, and I thought that that was really great for the kids to try to be their personal best instead of I'm better than you, because if you are judged at something, it is totally subjective. When Christian had some really hard times, and Nathan found it very difficult being Christian's brother, and everywhere he went, people would ask him, oh, blah, blah, how's your brother? Nathan just put his surfboard away and went motocross racing. Well, the thing is he could put on a helmet, and there was the sense of anonymity,
Mm-hmm.
and there was and that to him was very freeing. And so he did that for quite a few years. And so he grew up within himself with that helmet on, right? And so then he finally put the motorcycle away after he got hurt a couple times and said, you know what? I am a surfer. And so then he went back, but he was more whole within himself. It wasn't kind of as Christian's brother, Herbie and Dibi's son, or any of the other stuff that had happened in the whole political surf scene that had come to
Mm.
pass, right? And so I thought it was very interesting how it was almost like a meditation of putting that helmet on and being contained within himself, right? And so, and then he could come back and go surfing because then it was for the right thing. He wasn't having to prove anything. It was just about him and his joy of being in the ocean. And
It was
maybe
like
that's the
self-therapy almost, eh?
absolutely. Maybe that's the greatest part about surfing. Put on that helmet and become yourself, and don't go out there to compete with someone else. Turn off the noise.
Yeah, and just have fun. Stop worrying about what other people think. Don't worry about
Yes.
whether you're as good as the dude next to you. All those
Yep.
sorts of things. We're not here to all get medals, kind of thing. It's not the this new millennial, like everyone gets a pat on the back. Well done, well done. It's about doing it yourself. The rewards are for yourself, not for anyone else. And that, I think, creates a really cool character within a person.
That creates greatness. It may not be in the skill level, but it creates greatness within yourself because you're honoring yourself, who you are as that individual. And I think that that's really, I think that that is so
liberating.
Do you understand, right? That then you talk to yourself. It's the dialogue you have. It's about growing up. It's about being true to that self within you, right? And I think sometimes we get so confused by the noise, and there seems to be demands about who you are or who you should be or what your role should be. You know, maybe it's time to step back and say, I got to find out what that is for me. I'm not going to let someone else dictate what that should be for me or what their idea of who I am should be. And I think we all have that journey. And I think that if we can just share a few tools, my tools may not work for you, but maybe my tools will help you to find your own.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think that that becomes the greatness of who we are as friends and you know, as humans, right, if you will, right? And I think that that's probably, if that was the advice to give, that would be the advice. Find out who you are within yourself and be true to that, whatever that means to you. Do you understand? And I think surfing is a great activity. I think it's something great to do. I think I think it's all great. I like running. I love dancing. I like playing music. All of it. All of it is maybe can become a part of you that makes you better, who you are just on your own, right? And I think it's creating the skills and opportunities. And I think the secret of growing older is to always maintain your sense of curiosity.
There we go.
Then you will always grow.
Dibi, thank you so very much. I've got 8 minutes until the power goes off, so I want to save this footage.
Okay.
I cannot thank you enough for coming on Shredding the Gnar, Dibi. It's been an absolute treat. Thank you for unlocking and sharing with us some beautiful insights. Your wealth of knowledge is just absolutely astounding. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you.
Stay in touch, honey. This has been fun.
Can you say, I'm Dibi Fletcher, and I'm shredding the Gnar with Steve Shooter?
I'm Dibi Fletcher. I'm shredding the Gnar with Steve Shooter. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Talk
Dibi.
to you soon.
Blessings.
Bye.
Take care.
Shred.